What's that say?
It says you're live.
Now there's a little
Oh,
thingy. Oh, it's gone. Hello. Apparently I'm live. Hello, everybody. I wasn't quite sure if I'm live. I think I'm live. Apparently I am live. So here in Canada, it's 11 o'clock in the morning in the middle of the prairies. Not a bad day. Yesterday was a scorcher. And hello, everybody. Now, just to let you know the setup. This is where we shoot our films. These are my models. There's a table for props next to me. At my feet is my lovely Rupert, who refuses to come and sit on my lap at the moment because it's snooze time. And Julie, the ever faithful and efficient Julie, is right there ready to tell me what I've got to say in case I don't include everything she's told me I've got to say. So first of all, welcome. This is my first live stream, and thank you very much for joining me. Now, I haven't got my specs on, and I can see there's lots of comments coming up there, and I'm going, oh, I wonder what they say. They're a blur. Julie will fill me in. But what this is about, I suppose, is my archery journey, or my journey to where I am, because it's quite a story. And of course, when you are the principal actor in the story of life, you don't realize it's a story there. So I'm going to take you back to my very young childhood. I was born in Birmingham, in the Midlands of England, in what used to be the county of Warwickshire, but it got changed to the West Midlands for some reason. I don't know why. I was born into Nechells, which is now an area which has been changed so much. Even my local church, St. Clement's, where I was christened, and the family had all their funerals, marriages, that kind of thing. It was bombed during the war, so part of it is being demolished because it's unsafe, so I understand. So a little raggedy ass kid, you'd call me, running loose around these streets of industrial Birmingham. There was only one character I could ever be: Robin Hood. I loved everything to do with Robin Hood. And then later on, as we move out of the inner city to the edge of the city, I learn about cowboys and Indians, and everybody's running around with pistols and cowboy hats. We're only, 6 or 7 years of age, but I'm the one with a feather stuck down the back of his balaclava hood because I'm the Indian, because I've got a little bow and arrow with a sucker on the end. And that's where I kind of separated from most other kids. I wanted to be Robin Hood. The age, I can't remember, probably 10, 11, or maybe even younger. My father one year asked me, because he'd given up on football because I was useless at it. He says, what do you want for Christmas? I says, I want a bow and arrow, a real one. And he looked at me, he says, why on earth do you want a real bow and arrow? I said, I'm going to be Robin Hood when I grow up. And he, don't be stupid. Don't be silly. And I said, but I want a bow and arrow. So he must have thought there'll be something sports in it. And he actually got me a reel. It was an American flat bow, because we're right back in the 60s, and 3 arrows. No tab, no brace, just the bow, the string, and 3 arrows that fitted the bow. And it was my best Christmas present, I suppose, except for me bike later on. And I was a terror, because don't just give a kid a bow and arrow, especially a real one, and expect him to be really good and aim at the right things, because I aimed at all the wrong things. I think I mentioned it in a video years ago about how I shot up because there was nowhere to shoot in the backyard. I shot up to see where the arrow would go. And on shooting this arrow up, away it goes, I suddenly realized, oh, bugger, it's going to come down. So I stepped into our kitchen door, in the doorway, when the woman opposite steps out with her big basket of washing. And in all that split second, bang, 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 the arrow landed right behind her. And all the time she was hanging out the washing, pegging out the washing, the arrow was right behind her. And she stepped away from it, and I was so grateful she didn't step on it, because I only had 3 arrows and I couldn't get any more. And it was my next door neighbors who moved in, saw me messing about with my bow and arrow. They were actually sports archers. and they said, we'll take you to the Lichfield Archery Club, because we'd moved out to Lichfield in Staffordshire by now. The countryside, the woods, open fields. It was paradise for Kevin. And they took me down to the club, and the club looked at me bow, and they kind of turned up their noses. Oh, it's a flat bow. You've got to have sights on it. And I'm looking at them. I hadn't got a clue what they're talking about. So they stuck a bit of tape to the front of my bow, stuck a pin, and says, you've got to learn to use sights. And I didn't like it. And they didn't like me. I was a scruffy kid, Wellington boots and my school coat, where they had blazers, jackets, and everybody had these beautiful 1960s laminated recurve bows with sights and all kinds of stuff. And I couldn't hope to compete. But in fact, they stuck me into a competition, and I actually beat some of the other kids. And they didn't like this at all. And I had to go up to the next stage. But I only had my 3 arrows, and they wouldn't let me reshoot. And they wouldn't let me have any arrows out the stores. So that's when Kevin turned his back on archery clubs. I was treated quite badly, and I decided, no, I shall be Robin Hood. So that's my founding years as the budding archer. Now I'm going to have a look and see if there's any comments that I can react to now. Is this the right time, Julie? Because she's there. She's looking at her laptop. Yeah. No.
Right. Okay. Well, mostly.
Oh, hold on.
Mostly at the moment, it's people saying hi, and just wishing you really well, and saying how much they are enjoying the video. There's a couple of names.
Oh, I've got a list of names.
Only some of them.
Only some of them. Just a fraction. I got to say special hi to Scrappy Doo, Doctor Who, What Where, Mike, Alicia, or Elisa. Got to get them right. King J, Chris Cook, and Life School. Is that Daniel? So many names. It's wonderful. You know, I've always been a chap of, I suppose you can say, few friends. Because I couldn't play football, I had strange eyesight. I'm colorblind. In those days, it was quite severe. So if it was a reddish brown ball coming on a green football pitch, I didn't stand a chance. Same with cricket, but nobody realized it until I went in the army, and they says, well, your sight for us is perfect, because boy, can I shoot. I love it. So let's move on. So here I am as a kid. I failed to meet the grade in the archery clubs. But what bit me when I was at Lichfield Archers was we were shooting on the ground at the back of Lichfield Cathedral. And some of you may have seen my film on Lichfield Cathedral. It's a battlefield from the English Civil War, Roundhead's Cavaliers. And then Beacon Park around the corner, it goes back to medieval times. And I just began to soak up the history. And it was when I was a young teenager, I joined a fledgling reenactment group called the Sealed Knot. It was really brand new at the time. And I was a pikeman in the King's Army, and just soaking up all of the history, loving all the history. But I hadn't left this desire of Robin Hood. I simply hadn't left him behind. I still used to shoot, but it was always on my own. And then one thing led to another. I joined the army. And people say, oh, why did you join the army? Well, I joined the army twice. I joined the army as a young 16-year-old. And I witnessed the terrible car bombing. A number of people being blown to pieces, and the bloodbath afterwards. I saw most of the bloodbath afterwards. And our training stopped. It wasn't good. So I got bored, and I came out of the army. Still got my little bow. Still shoot here and there. And then I joined the regular army again. And they say to me, oh, what do we have here then? You're intelligent. I think that was the first time in my life I'd been told I was intelligent. And apparently I'd scored quite well on the, examination to get in the army. And he says, right, okay, what do you want to do? I says, well, can I go to the parachute regiment, please? That's where I was a little junior. And they went, no. I said, oh. He says, no, they're full up. I says, well, can I go into the Lancers then, the 16th Lancers? That's my, no, they're full up. And he says, do you know what I see in front of me? I said, go on in. And he says, I see a military policeman. And I remembered the military police in Aldershot when I was a boy soldier. They terrified me. But then he says, you pass through basic training through your little police college, you'll get your first stripe and a pay rise. I was hooked. So I go through all of my training and they say, are you any good at any sports? I went, yeah, I'm really good at archery. And they went, oh, we don't do archery in the army. Oh, right. So I did running. I was quite good at running, mainly because I used to run away from everybody when I was a kid because I just shot their cat or something, you know, that kind of thing. Yeah. So I've joined the British Army and I still have my bow, but then I'm posted to Berlin. So I gave my bow to my cousin. When I get to Berlin, I'm posted down to Helmstedt on the East-West German border. And I'm chatting away with a friend I'd made there in the Royal Signals. And I says, yeah, I'm looking for a bow and arrow, because I love archery. And he said, I've got one. He says, we never use it. Do you want it? All of a sudden, I have a man-sized bow, still American flat bow, with a handful of arrows, tabs, braces, and somewhere to shoot. And I loved it. Everybody else would be out doing whatever downtown on a Saturday afternoon. I'll be out the back shooting me longbow. And then when I moved into married quarters, there was a field up the road and I'd just go out and shoot me arrows. I kept it going all the way through. In Northern Ireland, it was a bit difficult. So I had a bit of a break, but then out in Cyprus, I'd still got my bow and I'd inherited a crossbow. So I'm starting to run two things together. Down the range, I could shoot me military weapons, but I could also shoot my medievally type weapons. And it was great. I thoroughly enjoyed it. But then when I was posted out of Cyprus, I left it all behind. I gave it away because I was going into a new phase of my life. Things weren't good. So I thought the best thing to do, leave the crossbow, leave the bow and arrows with other people who could pick it up. And it's quite interesting because the twists and the turns that happen. So I'm going to have a look now. Comments.
Right. Okay. So we got some questions here.
Questions here.
Questions. Okay. Chad asks, do you ever shoot recurve bows?
Chad has asked, do I ever shoot recurve bows?
Also, Ismail has asked if you were talking about sightless bows. Have you ever used, what non-English bows have you used? Right.
So I have shot the Mongolian horse bows. I actually possessed one. And I've also shot a Sioux short hunting bow. I've shot them from horseback and I've shot them for fun. But I will be honest with you now, they're simply not for me. I did it and enjoyed it, yeah. As for modern recurves with the sights, never touched one. In fact, a lady who I'm instructing now, she had a recurve, a modern recurve with everything, the sights and that, and asked, did I want to shoot? It's just not me. Yeah. I was also last weekend, I was out in the wilderness of Saskatchewan. And when I say wilderness, wow. Yeah. I was shooting with Dan, his only bow is got all the pulleys and all of the mega sights and the trigger release. It's simply not for me. Yeah. Mine is the longbow. Yeah.
Elisa, your Patreon member there, she's asked, can you shoot a bow on a horse?
Yeah, Elisa, I shot from the back of a horse quite a number of times. It's with the longbow, with the Mongolian bow, and with the Native American bow. And there's a trick to it. Stand in your stirrups. Don't sit. Stand. You need a good horse. But you've got to remember, you look at, because when Kevin did the Mongolian bow, got myself a Mongolian bow. So what were their horses like? Their horses are very small and they have a different gait. They don't gallop like your Mustangs, yeah, or your thoroughbreds. They actually do a side trot, and you can sit on them and you just do a gentle blah, 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 blah. I've never had the privilege to ride one, but I've watched, yeah, the natives of those lands with it. And it's interesting with the longbow, because I've shot the bow I've got now over at Warwick Riding School with Carl there. I've shot forward, the bow is canted right over. I've shot to the side. Shooting behind you with a longbow is really difficult, because as you bring the lower limb round, you tickle the horse on the backside. So instead of you going in a straight line, you're now going off at a tangent and people are running for their lives. That's the world of Kev. Yeah, it's going to be fun, but something's going to happen. So in answer to your questions, yes, I've shot the different kind of bows, except your modern sports bows. I'm a longbowman, have been now for 60 years. Yeah, easy. Okay, any more comments?
Yeah, a couple of quick questions. So one is, have you ever shot a Surrey Bowman Epsom race course? And another one, have you ever done anything pantomime or theatrical, or are you just natural?
Do you know, I've shot at Epsom race course years ago, because I got friends who've just moved out of Epsom, and I've shot down the Downs. And I can't remember what it was with or what it was about now, but I have done. Yeah. And as for pantomime, the only pantomime I've done is as a British soldier hamming it up for the Christmas pantomimes at Pergamos Camp in Cyprus, 1982-3, that kind of time. As for shooting the bow for showbiz, I did one special, and it was for the parachute regiment, and it was in a banquet or a regimental dinner. And you had long tables, wide, with people either side. And they says, could I shoot down the table?
It's before health and safety.
This is way before any health and safety stuff. And I did it. And I hit the target, and they were, wow. Yeah. I've also shot for the Royal Marines in one of their bases down in Devon, and did something very similar. But we can't do that kind of thing now, especially after one of the soldiers went, hey, and nearly got 30-inch of arrow through his head. But that is a whole different story. I am not showbiz trained. Everything I do is just Kev. The one thing I did do, I went to stage combat school to learn how to not hit people when you're doing performances at Warwick Castle. And that is a story in its own right. Yeah.
Okay. One more question. There are others coming in, but one final one for now, and you can carry on with your stuff. Steve Sullivan has asked, have you done any bow hunting? Have you done any bow hunting?
That's Steve Sullivan.
Yeah.
Steve Sullivan, have I ever done any bow hunting? Only in England. I'm an absolute dead rabbit killer. And do you know, it wasn't very nice. Apart from that, when I was in the military out in Cyprus, I had to do a lot of shooting of animals, putting them down, hunting them down, wild dogs. And if you like, I've killed enough things in my life. So when I come to Canada, people said, oh, you can go hunting, you can do this, you can do that. I'm all right. I like fishing, and I'll eat the fish I catch if they're big enough. But nowadays, I'd rather look at Bambi and go, oh, that's nice. Yeah. However, if I happen to be out with my longbow and a great big moose come charging towards me, I'll guarantee I can run away faster than the person next to me. Okay, right. So where was I?
Okay.
Yeah, we're down into the army. Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? So I left the army because of tragedy. I was doing very well. I've been decorated by the Queen, all that kind of stuff. And my friend, he didn't make it, and it was a waste of a life, and it broke my heart. We were very, very good friends. Only veterans, you'll understand it. He was my mate. Simply that. He was my mate, and he didn't make it. So I come out of the army. I was going to become a mercenary. You kind of get stuck with soldiering. I'd done so much counterintelligence anti-terrorist work, that it was like a glove. Yeah. But I stopped myself and I thought, Kev, you don't need to go to Africa. You don't need to go to the Middle East. I got 2 children. I got a divorce now. And I thought, I'll stay in England and I'll see if I can become a police officer. And I did. And they sent me away to Cwmbran in South Wales, where it's part of my ancestry, to the police training college. And I met a young lady who's now sat in the same room as me at the local hotel, where she was the receptionist. And cut a long story short, we, have been married how many years? 35, is it?
35 now, I think. Yeah.
We've been married 35 years and have been together a little bit longer than that. And it was Julie who one Christmas gave me a present that changed my life. And I've still got it. Well, here he is. This is a Ron Palmer down in Kent there, longbow. It's hickory and lemonwood. And here are 2 of the original arrows that came with the set. Pete Hobbs, who I knew through being a paramedic at our local ambulance station, he was an archer and used to make arrows. And so he helped Julie put this together as a Christmas present, because Julie found out that I had this love of archery. I'd been to a holiday camp kind of a place, a nice place, Centre Parks in Nottinghamshire, where I'd shot the bow for a bit of fun. And our friends, Jackie and Gary, told Julie that I was really good. Pete Hobbs then says, do you want to come out and shoot? And this is the first ever photograph of Kevin shooting a longbow. And he says, you don't shoot like everybody else, do you? I said, what do you mean? He says, you cant your bow over, you draw kind of differently. I went, oh, right. And what I didn't know is they took that picture away and compared it to a medieval drawing. And they says, you just shoot like they used to years ago, because I've never been trained. Not part of an archery club. It's just Kevin. But now people were taking me out. I could go and shoot in the forest, and I was starting to hone my skill with a real longbow. Yeah. Any more comments now?
Yeah. Okay. Some questions. So you've got
Some
Jodie,
questions.
Princess Jodie.
Princess Jodie. Hi, Jodie.
So she says she knows you've always wanted to be Robin Hood. What was your first experience with the story? She remembers being about 10 and finding a random storybook on the shelf that was Robin.
She asks, what was my first story about Robin Hood? So my old man, my dad, he's still alive. He's 90 in May, bless him. The one thing he gave me was this love of history. We'll go to Warwick Castle, or we'll go to Sherwood Forest. And it was on a visit to Sherwood Forest. I was very, very young. I remember it was before my sister was born. She's, I'm not going to tell you how much older than her I am, because you'll be able to figure out how old Jane is. 65. And we're in the major oak, this great oak tree in the middle of Sherwood Forest. And it's grown open in the middle, and you can get in as a kid. And he says to me, he says, this is Robin Hood's oak tree. And I'm looking at my dad with eyes this big. And I'm going, really? He says, yeah. So this is where he would store his gear when he was running away from the sheriff of Nottingham. And then we would get to Nottingham Castle and to some of the caves and things under Nottingham Castle. And he would tell me, this is where the outlaws would hide and all of the business. Bang. My dad had done it. My first story of Robin Hood was in Sherwood Forest, was in the major oak, and it was then in Nottingham. So I was bitten. And can you imagine the thrill when I got tracked down and asked, would I do a shoot under the major oak at Sherwood Forest? And I remember standing there before my first show at Sherwood Forest, leaning on my bow and looking into the major oak and remembering my dad kneeling down and showing me inside. It's just wow, you know. And I've done the same with my kids. I've tried to give them the stories, and in fact, Stuart, my eldest, is a wizard storyteller, I will tell you. And there's always a twist. And Joshua, our younger son, is a reenactor, and he's totally immersed in medieval. Yeah, Wars of the Roses. My biggest thing with Joshua is he never took up the longbow. He prefers the guns, the swords. But hey, there, you know, he's immersed in the history. Right, let's see if there's any more comments or anything, questions.
So quickly, Dave Schultz asked, are there any restrictions on owning or shooting a bow in Britain?
Yeah, Dave Schultz, are there any restrictions about owning a bow in Britain? No. And crossbows as well. But I think they're trying to bring in legislation because of a recent killing with a crossbow. But, you know, I mean, I come across in the military police somebody who used a handheld crossbow, very, very slight power and all that kind of stuff. It'll still kill. Yeah. So, no, there are no restrictions at the moment. Yeah. Any more?
So somebody's asked if you can talk about your work with Bernard Cornwell, which I know you plan to. So
yeah,
that's good.
Somebody's asked about Bernard Cornwell. We're going to get to it.
And also Rupert, which we'll get
and
to.
Rupert, who I'll wake up and I'll make sure I show you. So Julie's now pointed at the list of things that I've got to cover. So I joined the police and I loved being a police officer. I was just right on the west side of London. I was a community police officer in Denham in Buckinghamshire. And I had a series of incidents. I injured my spine, carried on. But then on one day I dealt with, or 1 week, I dealt with so many deaths on my own. There was no support in those days, and they were running down the numbers in the police force. We'd gone, I remember when I first joined at Gerrards Cross Police Station, there were a dozen to 18 police officers around the briefing table. At the end of my career, I used to let myself into the police station to make a cup of tea. There was nobody in there. And I remember having to deal with lots of different kinds of horrendous deaths, killings on the road and that kind of. What broke my soul was a terrible child death. And I didn't realize that what had happened was, as the psychologist or psychiatrist put it, he says that child death was the straw that broke the camel's back. And I have PTSD. And then you can trace it back to bombs in Northern Ireland and some of the terrible things you have to deal with as a military policeman, mainly centered around death. And so the police got rid of me. I was no good no more, psychologically and physically a little bit broken. I got a job locally, but unfortunately I just couldn't last. I think I was working for them for about 3 months and they says, look, Kev, this isn't working out. So Julie and I moved back to South Wales, where Julie's from, and I got a lovely house high up on a hill, what they called a mountain, and it had room in the back for me to shoot me longbow. And I could just go out when I was feeling a little bit better because I was on walking sticks. It's not very good. And I'd try and shoot the bow a little bit at a time. And I hated the situation I was in, because I could have disability benefits, all that kind of stuff, and I hated it. So I would do anything to get out, to exercise. And my doctor was working with me, and it was the most amazing conversation I had with him. He says, you want to work to get over your spine injury? I says, yeah, how can I do it? And together with this great doctor, Dr. Parabag Manam, we got me walking around without walking sticks, shooting me bow once a week, going to a school to volunteer to do road safety because of what I'd witnessed as a both military and civil police officer. And what I didn't realize is I was building up strength. I was building up muscle. I'd already had surgery on the spine, which was horrendous. And I'm doing the school one day and they said, we're going to be late next week for the road safety for the cycling proficiency. I said, oh, why? What are you doing? They said, oh, we're doing the Civil War, the Cavaliers and Roundheads. I said, oh, I've got a a musket at home and a roundhead costume from when I was in the English Civil War Society. And they says, wow, would you show us? I says, yeah. And I explained to the teacher I could only do it for half an hour because then the pain creeps in. So off I go to a school, fire me musket, tell the kids all about Charles the First and so on and so forth. And the teacher went, you have a gift. I went, really? And she says, yeah, we got over 350 children watched you and not a single one of them stirred. You held them. They hung on your every word. She told another teacher who told another teacher who hired me to go to the school. And just as I'm leaving the class, this teacher gave a throwaway comment. It's a shame it's not the longbow you shoot. I says, sorry? It's a shame you don't shoot the longbow. We'd love somebody to show us what a Welsh bowman was like in the medieval times. Seize the day. It's something I've always done. Seize the opportunity. I said, I've got a longbow. What do you want? Could you take our group, our school, round Chepstow Castle and shoot the longbow? And yes, I've just got to get permission from the castle. Wow. So I left the school, told Julie I hadn't got a costume, I got a longbow. I made a pair of medieval hose out of an old man's pair of long johns, made a tabard, bought a helmet, second-hand sword. Then I found out where Chepstow Castle was, important, trotted down to see Roger Morgan, the custodian. He welcomed me with open arms. Wow, yeah, bring the schools in, that'd be lovely. So I did the school. And then another school got in touch. All of a sudden, I'm going from somebody who could simply lie back and live a life of disability benefits to somebody who was now balancing the accounts. While I was at Chepstow, I was noticed by an American tour group, Tauk Tours. Could you do our tour group? Now we let go of any benefits. They're gone. I'm making money. I am still injured with my spine. It's still bad, but I'm persevering. I'm shooting Ron Palmer's bow. And I realized then I need to go from turkey fletch arrows to medieval. So that's when I found out about a guy called Richard Head. And he made me, I don't have it anymore, my first yew longbow and a sheaf of arrows. Later on, Richard would offer me some medieval arrowheads, some originals. This is one of them on the end of the arrow there. They're my treasured possessions. They're worthless, really. It's intrinsic value. They're medieval, you know, blah, 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 but they are mine. There was no stopping me now. Warwick Castle found out about me. I think I'd sent a photograph of me with the ragged staff of Warwick and said, hey, this is what I'm doing in South Wales. Cross-reference with the American tour group who used to go to Warwick as well. And I'm invited to go and shoot at Warwick Castle. This is the beginning of a whole new phase of my life. But just before we go on to Agincourt and Bernard Cornwall, let's see about any comments.
Okay, so we've got, you might want to read these out actually.
Cold tea. Right.
So these are super chats, and I wasn't expecting anything like that. So some people have donated some money to the channel.
Oh, super chats. See, I don't know anything about this, but hey, Michael, the first video I saw from you was medieval wounds. What happens when you take an arrow to the knee? Do you know, I've actually had an arrow in me. In fact, I'll show you the arrow. This Type 11 arrowhead. I don't know if you can see it because of the filming. There it is. It's just that thing there. I may have mentioned it on one of my films. I was shooting, big display in a field. There were 3 or 4 horses. One of them I used to ride. We're down. It was at Warwick Riding School. And there's a thunderstorm. And this thunderstorm, I'm just going to pass this back to Julie a second. was violent. The lightning was coming across the fields. The horses were going berserk. I've got a 7-foot longbow, so I'm going to pack it up. And then lightning strikes a tree not far away. OMG, everybody's running for their lives. Kevin is stuck with his bows and his arrows. So I'm putting everything in the back of my estate car that I had then. And a particular arrow fell out my hand. And as I went to grab it, it hit the back of my car, hit me just there, and slid right the way up into the palm of my hand. And I went, ow. And I thought I'd been stung by a bee. And then I realized I had all of this hanging out of my hand. It was like, I don't know if anybody else has been stabbed. It felt like an electric shock as it went up into the muscle. Thunder, lightning, horses galloping round, torrential rain now, and I'm stuck like this. So I very slowly, because I was conscious the arrowhead wasn't stuck on, very slowly pulled it out. And boy, did it bleed. It was like a tap. And I thought to myself, hang on a second. You're going to be in trouble here. That's a deep wound. So I wound wet bandage all the way into the wound, put a pack on it, taped it, and drove home with blood dripping up my arm. And I thought, how did they deal with arrow wounds in the past? Because this really hurts. And I cleaned it, washed it all the way up, kept the bandage, pushing it all the way up, because I'd read that if it's a deep penetrative wound, it must heal from the bottom out, like they did with Henry V. Oh, right. So that's Kevin's path to how they got arrows out of people, because I've pulled one out of myself. And I've only got, it's just a slight scar, but I will tell you this, it really hurts. Right. Yeah. Big thank you for super thanks from Michael. What's that one?
Fabian's SW8.
Fabian SW8.
Ian Goody.
Ian Goody. And Dr. David Howard. Hey guys, this is all new for me, and it's great. Oh, I've got one I can read. Hi Kevin, who is your favorite English king? That's from James Gibbs. Do you know, the more I read, the more I study, I'm not sure I like any of them. It's a hard one, isn't it? You know, when I joined the Sealed Knot, the English Civil War Society, it was Charles I. Wow, Charles I, God save the king. But then I read what he was really like. And I thought, no. Hang on a second. You have no idea about your own people. Henry V, I suppose he's got to be up there. But then when you look at the overall picture of Henry V, Edward III is another one of my favorites. But when you look at the overall picture, that taking back what they perceive as their lands, and they're leading a country into war. And you look at the end of Henry V's reign, I'm just starting to deal with that now. He's bankrupting the country. And the amount of lives that have been lost, you know. And it's the same as when I was at Blenheim Palace, working there as the musketeer from 1704. You start to look at the wars and the amount of people that die. So, my favorite king. I think my favorite king has to be Elizabeth II, because she was my queen and I served her and she wrote to me. In history, gosh, I suppose it's got to be Edward III. Yeah, followed by Henry. That's about it, really. Okay. Right. Any more, my dear? Or shall I carry on for a bit?
You carry on for a bit.
Yeah. So I've left the police. We're down in Wales, and I've now started at Warwick Castle. And I thought at Warwick Castle, I'm shooting this longbow. I'm accurate across the front there. And people were they wanted more. What about this? What about that? And that's when I formed an act about the Battle of Agincourt. And I learned about the battle from different sources. Been to Agincourt, got the arrowheads. Where is it? This is your Richard Head influence for me. A couple of recovered arrowheads from France. And I would show people these and even put them in people's hands. You know, they're just bodkins. And people, wow, this is actually from France. And then I realized if you can put history literally into people's hands, they're hooked. And one thing I did was Jonathan de Hadley, the jester at Warwick Castle. He's still a jester around the world. He used to sell tissue thin Tudor or medieval coins, and I've still got them. And one trick I would do, I think this one's a shilling, is I'd put it into children's hands and I'd say, this coin is 500 years old. Think about that. 500 years old. So when this coin was being spent for the first time, and I'd quote whichever king or queen was on the throne. And then I asked the question, how many loaves of bread has this purchased? How many families has this fed? How many pints of beer has it purchased in its life? And you can feel the audience go, wow. And then, of course, I got the idea of the extraction of the arrowhead, and that became part of the act and a bit of Henry V. And I'd arrived. I was the bowman at Warwick Castle and very happy. Yeah, and I used to shoot across the front of the green there and across the ditch. But then they asked, could I do something on the River Island at the back of the castle? And I says, the safest thing for me would be to shoot across the river. And I'd never shot across such a wide expanse as the River Avon. And it changes the whole idea of your arrow going straight. And I learned very, very quickly by having to get my arrows out the river, how to shoot high, drop the arrows in. And then somebody asked me one day, how far is that? And I hadn't got a clue. So when everybody gone home, I got a big spool of thread, tied it to an arrow, shot it across the river. Then I got the arrow back because there'd been a tangle. I think it took me 4 attempts to get the arrow clean across the river and to where the target was. And we then measured the rope or the twine, and it was a 90-yard shot. And I don't care who you are, 90 yards is a good shoot. Yeah. And across a river where the target is actually higher than you are, you've got to do some figuring out. And that was at my height of shooting at Warwick Castle. So I was shooting 6 days a week. We were figuring out just how many arrows at the height of my Warwick Castle career. And it was figured out that I'd shot approximately in 12 months, something like 50,000 arrows. And I practiced before the castle opened. I practiced often after the castle was closed. And then I took classes. I showed people how to shoot. And I got dozens and dozens of students, mainly interested in archery. And when I left Warwick, it was quite touching because the general manager, Sarah Montgomery, to say goodbye. And what I didn't realize, she was leaving as well. And she gave me a picture and, you know, she says, you've been great and blah, blah. It was really nice. But what really touched me was when a group of the casual workers, the students, came up. And these kids who didn't have very much money at all had purchased a really early, either Saxon or medieval arrowhead as a thank you. That, to me, that says it all. When somebody recently made a comment about me on another site, says, oh, Kevin Hicks knows nothing about longbows. Well, actually, it's my life. And I have taught hundreds of people how to shoot. And that, as a thank you, let's put it against the flag. Try and get it a bit closer. It's a tanged arrowhead. That's lovely. Yeah. So Warwick Castle, what an education and what a time I had. Right, there's comments now.
So Richard Smith has asked a question relating to what you're talking about there with Warwick Castle. Have you ever shot with Mark Stretton or Simon Stanley?
I've never shot with Simon Stanley. I don't think I've ever met him, but Mark Stretton and I.
Tell the story.
Yeah, we go back. He's big. He is so strong. And yes, I've shot with Mark. And one of the guy who made my longbows. Oh, goodness me.
He's moved to Ireland.
He's moved to Ireland and he's not very well at the moment, I've heard. And I've got to recall his name. Yeah, so just bear with me and I'll come up my bowier's name. But he made some bows and I was looking for a 90-pounder, really long, to see if I could, use one in my shows. I'd already got 2 of his bows, and it's really quite something because he'd made, I think it was a 120-pound bow for Mark Stretton to shoot and to try out. It may have been even more powerful. Now, don't forget, Mark Stretton, if he stands next to you and it's a sunny day, you're in the shade, right? He's a fabulous guy. I like him and his pals, yeah, who I've shot with. And he muscles and he comes up and he's going to shoot the bow and he shoots, lets a few off. He's testing it and all this kind of stuff. And we shot together using these new bows. And what we found was, because he's shooting these massively powerful bows, when he shoots one, I've shot 3. And I'm thinking, okay, how far can I get? Now he's out shooting me by 20 yards easy. He was over 300 yards down, right the way down the pageant field. And I thought to myself, wow, I'm going to give this bow a tug. So I go this bow and I'm drawing low across my chest and the bow exploded. And we've got splinters and we've got wreckage and we've got tears from a certain bowyer. So yeah, Mark Stretton, I've nothing but fond memories, and yes, I've shot with him, but not Simon Stanley. I don't think our paths have ever crossed because I never put myself out there in those days. Yeah, I was just Kevin the Bowman. Yeah, so it's interesting, but at the same time I was at Warwick, I kept my school business going on. So if in the winter time I do short weeks at Warwick, I would then go to the schools and improve my schoolwork. And I got asked to do different things. First World War, Civil War, English Civil War. And so things spread, the Romans. And when I left Warwick, yeah, it was sad, actually, what happened at Warwick. There was an individual who'd taken over the junior management, wanted to reduce my wages. And he says, no, we're going to bring your wages down to fit in with other people. I think you pay too much. So I says, bye. He said, well, you can't leave. You're under contract. I said, you should have signed it 2 years ago. And I left that afternoon. Very, very sad because I'd had such a fabulous time and I had such a large, fabulous following of people and it was destroyed. But now I go to, then I went to castles all over England. Went to Australia, United States to shoot, Germany, Scotland, which was just wow to meet Scottish people at Falkirk and talk to them about medieval warfare. And just one very quick funny story, a little Scottish chap, about 12 years of age, nicotine stains all up and down his fingers with the eternal burning cigarette. And I'm stood there, Red Cross, talking about English Scottish history because I'm part Scots, so I can take a foot in each camp, English, Scottish, Welsh and Irish. I'm a true Brit. And this young laddie says, so you're not from here then? I went, no, I'm English. Ooh. And he looks at his little gang of terrors and he says, so you're not born here in Falkirk? No. Ooh. And I shoot an arrow and he goes, so you're not Scottish then? No, I'm English. Oh, and then another one chats to him and he says, so you're different and you're not from here? No. You're not from Glasgow? No, I'm not Scottish. I said, my grandfather, well, my great-grandfather was, but I'm not. Ooh, in the end, I sent them to go and see the knight over yonder, who was dressing up as an English knight. And after we'd finished and we're packing up, he says to me, Mark, he says, did you send a bunch of kids over to me who were asking questions like, are you born in Scotland? Are you from Scotland? I went, yeah. I said, how long did it take you to get rid of them? Half an hour. He says, they drove me mad. You're not Scottish then. But I had a great time. And I still continue to. Let's take some comments, see what we got coming up.
Okay, we've got lots and lots of questions. I don't know if we're going to be able to have time to answer all of them.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so which do you prefer, longbow or musket? It's a quick one. That's from Michael.
Which do I prefer, longbow or musket? I love the brown bess. I've got two. I've got an original from the Revolutionary Wars, and I do enjoy shooting them. But I've got to be honest with you, my first love has got to be the longbow. Yeah, it's simply that. I just love it. But close second, the musket. Yeah.
Okay. Best wood for a longbow, Dave Schultz.
Best wood for a longbow. Do you know, I made some bows just for friends to knock about with out of ash, because I used to have a secondary bow made of ash. And people go to me, oh, the best wood for longbows is this, 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 and the other. If you live somewhere where there's ash, use some ash. If it's osage, because you're from the United States, use a bit of osage. For me, of course, as a purist, yew. Yeah, the heart and sapwood of the yew tree has to be the business. But have a look at this. I bought a bow, my first bow, just for pleasure, not for showbiz, not for shooting at Sherwood or anything like that, just for me. And I got this from Ravenbeak Bows. They're a Canadian company over in British Columbia. I was just having a look at what bows they got for pleasure. Right, it's a yew bow. It's a very light pound. It's only 40 pounds. But look at the laminate on it. Snakeskin. And this is a fast little bow. I love it. So if I'm going out to the farm where I shoot just to relax, I will use this bow. It's actually got a name, Alwyn. Yeah, my other bows, I'm afraid they're nameless. They're just the bows with no name. This is pure fun. And people say to me, you know, should I do this? What poundage should I have? And I say to people, just enjoy. Don't do what I've done and tear muscle off your spine. Just enjoy your bow. People are always saying to me, what poundage are your bows? What's this? What's that? Well, I don't care anymore. I'm 70 in 6 months' time. I'm too long in the tooth to really care. And I'm the one who's been shooting the longbow for 60 years. So, hey, yeah, just get on and shoot. If you've got some decent bendy wood, shoot away. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So where are we going? Yeah. Oh, there's an interesting turn of events in my school career. Can you pass me that cap?
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I got asked by a teacher in South Wales, in Blackwood, and he says, could I used to do medieval at Chepstow for him. Then I used to do Civil War in Wales for him and First World War and so on and so forth. And he says, could I do a Nazi soldier for the school? And I went, no. He says, why not? I said, it's such a dark subject. And he says, well, we've got a problem at the school. I says, go on. Now we're talking now 20 odd years ago. Easy. And he says, there are no Jews around here. And our children have no idea what a Jewish person is like. And they are anti-Semitic without actually knowing what a Jew actually is or looks like. And he says, and that's actually quite racist. Now, it was a predominantly white area. So he fed in a question to one of the kids during one of my, I think, First World War performances. And I thought to myself, oh, my goodness me. 13, 14-year-old kids, they have no idea about what the Holocaust really was. And they have no idea who a Jewish person was or the state of Israel. I had no idea. So I says to Trevor Morgan it was, I said, look, I'll look into it. And I opened the lid of Pandora's box. I says to Trevor, I says, one of the hardest things is going to find the uniform. Then I found the company that supplied some of the uniforms for the Band of Brothers series. So I phoned him up. He's in North Wales. And this is pretty much the phone call. Hello, can I help you? And I went, hi, my name's Kevin Hicks. I've got a little company. I go around the schools and do this, that, and the other. I'm looking for a Second World War SS officer's uniform. Oh, right then. What's regiment? I hadn't got a clue. I simply hadn't got a clue. And I said, well, what I'm trying to do is, oh, right, that's interesting. And I said, I've centered on a guy, Rudolf Lang, Sturmbannführer Lang. Oh, Rudolf Lang, the butcher of Riga. What a guy. One of my favorites he is. And I'm going, he said he escaped after the war, disappeared. And I'm going, oh. And he says, yes, I could do his uniform for you. Do you want boots? Do you want everything? So I bought the entire kit from him. It's kept away. It's never on the sideboard or anything like that in my house. And there began a path or a line of my business, which still continues, because I lecture and teach the rise of the Nazis, the Holocaust. I've interviewed many of the people who are now dead, who had actually fought in the war, from SS to young ladies. And I'm still talking to children of the Blitz to compare what it's like for the Brits and for the German children. And I've really got under the skin of these people. But when I got the uniform and I tried it on, Julie says to me, wow, that is so elegant. And then I put on all of the insignia. She said, oh my gosh. Now I phoned the bloke back and I says to him, where'd you get everything? He said, well, the same company still makes the hats. The uniforms are East German. Much of the insignia is either a replica from Poland or it's original stuff because it's easy to obtain. And I went, wow. I says, so you supply to film companies? He says, no, not anymore. It's more profitable for me to supply uniforms to the reenactment people. I said, are you telling me that people reenact this? Oh, yeah. Well, I've seen them. And it's a hard one, isn't it? It's history. But I now lecture by remote learning the Inuit kids right on the northern tip of Canada. I'm still doing it. Okay. Right. Let's move on. We've got comments there.
Okay. Do you want to? Yeah, we do have some comments.
Yeah.
So NK730 asks, hi, Kev, did you ever study history at university or do higher education? And do you play any musical instruments?
I've never studied history at school. I was useless, dyslexic, dyspraxic, and colorblind. I was put off school when I did a horse, drew a horse, then painted it. And I was so proud of this horse, muscle definition, but it was green and everybody laughed and the teacher took the piss out of me. Yeah, I'm colorblind and people miss that little word at the end, blind. It turned me off. But it's only through later times that I have studied. I used to teach at Bristol Grammar School, do my episodes there. And there was the head, what was his name?
Dr. Robert Massey.
Dr. Robert Massey was my go-to chap there. And I said to him the one day, I said, I'm thinking of taking a history degree. And he says, no, don't. And I says, why? And he says, you're dangerous. I said, what do you mean? He says, you're not a product of a professor. You are a guy who will go and down a rabbit hole and have a little investigation, come back. And you keep tripping us over with this different angles of history. Stay just as you are, Kevin. You're a maverick and we love it. So here I am. Right, go on.
Okay. Do you play any musical instruments?
Oh, where is it?
Did you not bring it in? I didn't see it.
Oh, here it is.
Mm-hmm.
I keep it in an old sock. This is Kevin. This isn't the great guy who looks after everything, This is my sweetheart flute. This has been dropped down the tower at Chepstow. I found all the pieces, glued it back together, and then bound it up. I've shut it in my car door 20 pieces were broken off. They're all back together again. And I love this. Nobody else does in the house, but I do. And it's Kev's little flute. So I can play this and I can play the bugle. Yeah. Right.
Okay.
Just one very quick story. My hat. This is Kev's hat. I bought this from Kirsty Buckland. She used to make Monmouth caps many years ago. I don't even know if Kirsty's still alive, bless her. It now has a copy of the pin that was found on the battlefield. Richard III's wild boar there, yeah. It has bowstrings inside it. But Kirsty Buckland, who made the hat, hated the fact that I did something with it. Well, if you give a retired British soldier a berry kind of hat, he will slope it over. And she says, you shouldn't do that. Well, I did. She said through messages, tell him to give me my hat back and I will give him a new one. But please stop wearing it like a berry. No, I didn't, never have. And I still do. And I've still got my hat. Right. Any more comments then?
Okay. Do you want to talk about your Bernard Cornwell?
Oh, I got asked. Bernard Cornwell.
This is Joe R.
Joe R.
Yeah.
Joe R. Bernard Cornwell. I got invited by the BBC to do a documentary. So I did a documentary. And I said, why did you choose me? Oh, you come highly recommended. I said, really? Who by? Oh, Bernard Cornwell, the author. I went, the guy who writes the sharp stuff. Yes. Wow. So I wrote a thank you note to him via HarperCollins, his book people. And he got back in touch. He said, I saw you at Warwick Castle shooting your longbow. Wow, he says. And I says, oh, right. He says, I'm writing some books. Can I ask you some questions? He bought me lunch. We met up at Warwick. I took my arrows. We chatted. I shot again for him. His books was the trilogy there, the Grail Quest, Thomas of Hookton. Yeah. And then before he published, or one of the books was published, HarperCollins hired me to go with Bernard out to Agincourt and do a performance and shoot. And if you look at the bottom picture, that's Kevin with Bernard Cornwell on the field of Agincourt. But the most wonderful trip I did with him was then he took me to Waterloo as a thank you. But I turned up in my 52nd of foot British soldier. And I helped him take his Sharp Appreciation Society round the battlefield of Waterloo. And I told some stories, fired the musket. And at the end of it, when he summed it all up, he says, and this is lovely. He says, do you know, I'm a story writer. He says, I make the stories. I write them down. He says, but Kevin, next to me, he's one of the greatest storytellers I've ever heard. And there was a massive round of applause. And wow, there you go, isn't it? In the army, people used to say, hey, Kev, love the stories. You're full of I'm not going to tell you the other word. Right, some more comments.
Okay, Lucastet777 says, did you ever work with Jason Kingsley on his historical project? Now, he is from Modern History TV, I think is his channel. And also somebody's asked about, oh gosh, what's that guy's name? I can't remember his name. Anyway, somebody else, but you do, and Todd's workshop as well. So you don't tend to watch.
Yeah, I tend to just keep myself to myself. It's sometimes difficult. People say like Todd's workshop. I mean, I've bought some of Todd's stuff, and yeah, great. Hey, but I'm on my own, and I try not to be coloured by other people's films or their opinions. If somebody says, yeah, arrows won't go through this, I'll go and test it myself. And if it's any good, I might use it. If it's not, I won't. I saw Mark Stretton did a fabulous piece about incendiary arrows. Yeah. And I thought that was really good. Lindy beige and all this kind of stuff. If I do anything on incendiaries, I'll ensure that if I use any of his material, everybody will know that I used it off his. Or I will simply just use my own opinion, because I've done a few tests with incendiaries, and the best thing I did so far was almost set myself on fire. But as for working with other people, I'd rather just stick to myself. It's Kev, and this is the PTSD thing. My friend died in 84, and it's hard to remake friends. Very hard. So when I say I was shot with Mark Stretton and I had a great time, that's a positive. Yeah. Go on.
Okay. Somebody says, any advice for archery beginners? I'm starting an archery club sometime in the next few months.
So any advice for archery beginners? Get a bow, get an arrow, and remember one thing. It's 2 sticks and a bit of string with a person behind it. Shoot. Just shoot. Have fun. If the arrow isn't reaching the target, move closer to the target. If the arrows are going over the target, move further back. Have some fun, because that's what it's all about, having some fun. I find that a lot of people get totally screwed up. Oh, relax. For me, I was shooting yesterday. I'm paying the price today in the pain, but I tell you, it blew the cobwebs out and I'm nicely relaxed. Yeah.
I don't think you can answer this very quickly. Who is the real Robin Hood?
Who is the real Robin Hood is the question. I'm going to do a film about it later on, and we'll have a look at it then. My bet is Robert the Bruce. Yeah, Robin Hood was a Scotsman who was an Englishman who was really one of the royalty, but he's also one of the characters I like in history, the Bruce. Yeah. Okay.
Okay, another one. So this is from A8T8T.
A8T8T.
So he's asked you to tell him a little about Rupert, the service dog.
Right, Rupert. I'll pick him up in a minute. He's fast asleep, so he won't be happy. The fact is, I have got that PTSD. It's shell shock, isn't it? You take so much and then you break. And we didn't realize how bad it was until Julie went away to see her mother in Australia. Her mother was not very well. And I was alone with my dog, and my dog died, and it was horrible. And I was alone. And mentally, you start to fall apart inside. Outside, you smiles. If somebody comes to the door, you hi, that's it, But when you're alone, all I could remember was the tragedies that I dealt with, even to the point of feeling the weight of bodies, tasting the blood, all the terrible stuff. So I thought, I must do something. I'm going mad in my own house here. And I telephoned the Combat Stress Emergency Helpline in England. And the next day, a guy come who'd been badly wounded himself with an explosion. And he said, right, this is what we're going to do. And they fetched my son home on leave, give him a couple of weeks emergency leave to look after his old dad. And he says, get yourself another dog, but think about what you're getting. Yeah. And this, could become your support dog, so on and so forth. And then I remembered at Blenheim Palace, where I was still working, was the Blenheim, the King Charles Cavalier Spaniel. They were given to women who were going through a heavy pregnancy to calm them down, but also soldiers coming back from the new wars. And I'd always got a soft spot for the King Charles Cavalier Spaniel, the Blenheim. So I says to Julie, let's have a look into this. And we found Rupert. It took really about 18 months to 2 years. We trained him ourselves because I wouldn't go into town on my own necessarily, because I looked very aggressive, because I can hide behind being the bowman. I can hide behind being a First World War soldier. But when it's just me in town, I can very easily fall back into being on patrol in Belfast or dealing with a tragic incident. So Rupert, and I knew he was on board when one day I was feeling very aggressive, I suppose, and he stopped me. And I sat down and I looked at him, and he jumped up on my lap, put his paws on my shoulders, and wouldn't leave me until I calmed down. And here he is. He's nine and a half now. He's rules the family. He really does. And he doesn't like being picked up when it's not time for us to go out. He comes with me to the museum where we volunteer, and I just clip his leash onto my belt, and he follows me around everywhere. And then when we come to sit down for a cup of coffee or something, he's on my lap. He checks me out. If we go anywhere to any of the big stores, which I just don't like, but I go, yeah. He's by my side. He has a special little coat. And as I look down, he's always looking up. He's always checking me. And if I feel as if I need to just cut away from people, I'll just pick him up, and we're great. He is my little support dog. Yeah. And that's just it, isn't it? You know, when you run short of mates, you haven't got anybody to share the burden. And so he is my little mate. And it's good because then Julie doesn't have to share all the burden of where I've been, what I've done, and who,
But she does.
blah, blah, blah. But she does. This is the lady who's picked up some of the pieces of the tragedy when I was a police officer. She's seen some not nice things when I've come home. But hey, go on in.
Well, Jodie D, Princess Jodie, she says she has to disagree with your views on Robin Hood. Her money is on Robin Hood of Wakefield.
Oh, Jodie, Robin Hood of Wakefield, not that old chestnut. You know, wait till I'll tell you what, we'll bring it up on the list. I will have to do the Robin Hood, and you know what you're going to find out, don't you? When we peel back all of the history, Robin Hood's real name is Kevin.
Anything else you wanted to cover?
I was just looking. So we did the arrows. Yeah. Did I mention that we counted up roughly how? Yeah, did the arrows. You know, I've been to so many different countries shooting, and I got invited to Northern Ireland to shoot. And I was quite not sure about this. And I says, yeah, okay, I'll go. What was his name?
Ooh, Ali McClelland.
Ali McClelland.
Yeah.
He's now living in Europe somewhere, riding horses round in circles with a new beautiful partner. So I've seen on the photographs. And I'm there shooting away, and I can hear the accents behind me. I was in Northern Ireland for a long time as a soldier, and I can recognize some of the different accents. And afterwards, when we're doing the close-up showing, they're pulling the arrowhead out and all of this voice, this man, he says, "You've been here before then?" And I went, yes. And I recognized his accent, Belfast, West Belfast. "You're a soldier then?" And I went, yes. He said, "I thought so." He wasn't happy, wasn't smiling. In fact, he was sinister. And he walked away to another group of men, and they pointed back to me. And I thought to myself, I'm glad I got 48 arrows and a sharp sword. When I left Northern Ireland, having done my weekend at Shane's Castle, I'm putting my hand luggage through the customs people there, forgetting that I'd put the head, the Madame Tussauds head that I used for the arrow extraction, in my hand luggage because it was valuable and I didn't want it broken. And I'm stood just waiting, watching the people, and my case goes through.
The X-ray machine. The
X-ray machine comes back, goes through again. The woman's looking round the counter at me. In it goes, comes back, calls the supervisor, who calls another person. There's about 4 or 5 of them looking, and then they're looking at me, and they call me over. "See your bag there?" Yes. And I still hadn't connected. "Do you have a head in there? A wee head?" And I went, "Yes." "A human head?" I went, "It's not real." And they're looking at me. "Could you open the bag?" So I opened the case and I drew out the head, and it's still glistening with blood. I had to show them that it was hollow and it was made of wax. And when I put it all back in, and there's 4 or 5 people stood there going, thank God for that. No, you can go now. And I reckon somewhere in Northern Ireland, there's these customs officials saying, do you remember the day that guy had the head there in the bag? Yeah. So wherever I go, there seems to be a little bit of calamity. Yeah.
All right.
Any more?
No, if you want to wrap it up, you need to say thank you to a couple of people here.
Right. I need to say thank you. Do you want to write them down?
I'm just going to put them up here.
Oh, right. Look at Julie is so efficient. Yeah. Right. I've got some big thanks to Elisa, Lukester777, Dr. David Howard, Susan Jojnik, Matthew Rowe, A8T8T. Some of these are great, aren't they? Ricky Mario, Fabian SW8, Dian Disability. Do you know, it's great. You meet these people around, you know, through this. And every now and again, I'll be recognized. And I get a bit embarrassed because, oh, you're the guy. Well, I was on a bus in the jungle in North Queensland, sunglasses, bush hat, and boots. And an Australian leans over and she says, excuse me, mate. I says, yeah, hi. Are you the Warwick Bowman? And I looked, I says, how on earth did you recognize me? She says, it's your voice, mate. You've got that kind of voice. So there you go. I often get recognized just by my voice. Yeah. And a big thanks to Matthew Rose. And I think we've been going for an hour and a quarter now. So I'm going to cut out, I think, because I've run out pretty much of most things to talk about. So
all about you now.
You know all about me. Yeah, I'm a complete lunatic. I now live in Canada, but I often travel back to England, thinking about Germany, because I do love Germany. And that's about it for now. So, hey, guys, thank you so much. I can see all of these comments in a blur going by. And I'd just like to say, hey, thanks to everybody. And I ain't going anywhere. I'm going to strip this model down today to make a new one ready for a film I want to shoot next week. Okay. So for now, bye, everybody. Thank you so much.
Okay. And we'll end that.